this live about Mental Health Awareness Week and what we can do for our employees in our organizations to support them throughout this week. Well, why am I doing this? Why have I decided to run this Q&A session? Well, I have been recently approached by many individuals looking for support for their employees in preparation for this week. And I'm realizing that it's the same questions that I'm receiving over and over again, but also I'm realizing the bigger picture about what is it exactly our organizations are struggling with in terms of supporting our staff, our people throughout this pandemic, throughout this change. And therefore, in this current context, I feel that this Mental Health Awareness Week gains a new aspect to it. There is a new need for doing something differently. This is not just about one-off activities that we can do to inspire our people to look after themselves in the short term. We are really looking at building capacity of our staff to build their well-being. So thank you for everyone who's tuning in. If you are watching, please do say hello. Hi, Sohan. I'm really well. Good to have you here. And I am going to be answering all of your questions that you want to know about how do we support ourselves in a better way and how do we support our employees. So I will start with some of the questions that have been coming my way. And I encourage you to ask your own questions, and I'll do my best to answer them as well as I can. Right. Hi, Kapish. How are you doing? What would be best tips for reaching equanimity? Well, I think that's really a huge question. If I will leave that a little bit for later, as I'm touching on as part of one of the questions that I think will help you with that. So stay tuned. I will give you more information on that. But what I wanted to start with is actually, how do we even choose the right activities for ourselves and also for our employees? So when we are either choosing some providers to come in and do their talks and activities, there's so many people out there now offering all sorts of inspirational keynotes and mental health awareness and sharing their personal stories. And there are so many well-being consultants, advisors in different fields offering their own different tools and hacks and strategies. So how do we know that we are doing the right thing for our company? So I think what is very, very important is to first understand our own needs. So our own needs as individuals. So what is it exactly that we are struggling with? What exactly do we need support with? But also on organizational level. So when we are looking at the company at work, what is the immediate support that is required? So if you're looking at kind of relief, instant relief support, what is it that is needed from that point of view? And what is needed in a long term? And really looking at matching some of the expertise with some of the providers or training or experts to match some of our needs. So that's definitely very important. But then when we're looking specifically at those experts, I would suggest to look at covering what I like following this head, heart, and hand rule. So what do I mean by that? So head is representing of all of the knowledge, all of the awareness, all of the insights. So what do I need to know now? What is it exactly that our employees would benefit from being aware of? So what is specific information or data or insights that we would like to acquire? And obviously, let's look at some of the providers who can fill in some of those gaps. Then we're looking at your heart. So here you're looking at how people are feeling. Are we being motivated? Are we being inspired? Are we being tired and stressed? And what is the feeling that we want to generate instead? And again, looking at fitting in something that can create this right energy, this right motivational space, this right trusting environment. And then we're looking at hand. So here we're looking at action, some practical tools, some things that we can do and apply in our own lives, in personally and in our businesses to address our own health and well-being. As you know, it's very, very important that every person is given resources to help themselves. So if we are only offering help and support where somebody else can do something for you, then that doesn't really encourage individuals to take ownership of their own journey. So it's very, very important that we have the right knowledge, we have the right insight, we have the right awareness, but we also have the right motivation to inspire people to act and give them then tools how exactly they can do that. So when we are looking at the right providers, the right activities, when we're structuring support for our employees, or again, when we are looking personally for ourselves to attend some courses, how exactly do we choose which ones to join? So I definitely suggest looking at this head, heart, and hand rule, and making sure that we're looking at what do we need to know, how do we want to feel, and what we need to be able to do, and cover those three bases. Right, Matt. So there is a wave of mental health issues like anxiety, social anxiety, and traumas about to hit people when returning to the workplace. Employers need to be aware of. This is definitely very, very important point, that some people are looking forward to going back to the workplace because maybe at home they don't have this right environment to be the most productive. Maybe there are a lot of challenges personally that they have to be addressing, and there are maybe no clear boundaries between your work and your personal life. And therefore, some people are really looking forward to going back into the workplace. But also, there are some other people who actually feel their best selves. Well, now they're working from home, and it provides them an opportunity to maybe balance their own different needs, to work on their own terms, to work in a way that they are best. And therefore, they are not looking forward to necessarily going back to the old ways of working. So either way, there is a lot of change. And from both parties, there will be a lot of stress and anxiety about the change. Again, there might be fears about change itself and the adjustments, but also we are operating in a new environment where, again, there might be anxieties about interactions and things that have been brought out about the pandemic. And Matt says that working at home has introduced the zen of home for many. And absolutely, it's what I'm really seeing that as a good thing of the pandemic, that it's no longer an option for employers to separate your personal life from work. Now, even the term, when we say work-life balance, I don't really agree with this term in itself, right? Because it implies that those two things are separate. It's like those two things, that it's one or the other, that you cannot have both. The more you have one, the less you have another, right? That's what balance means. To me, I think work is part of your life. We are not working to be able to, we're working to be able to live. We don't just live to be able to work, right? So it's very, very important that those boundaries are redefined, and everyone is experiencing the change that comes with its own stresses, pressures, anxieties. And it's very important that we do not assume that we know how people feel. And I think this is the point as well that Ned is making, that it's important that employers are considering each individual on their basis. And we shouldn't be telling them how that transition exactly has to happen. It's important that we're creating a way of creating flexibility and facilitating that change that best supports that person, their individual situation, and their individual needs. So when we're looking at accommodating some of those needs, now here is the balance. So how do you translate some of your short-term support interventions in a way that benefits people in a long term? And here I want to highlight one very important definition of terms, actually. And here, very often I see the blur between wellness and well-being. So when we have things like Mental Health Awareness Week, when we have Wellbeing Weeks, very often it's very, very easy to put in some wellness activities, which is, here is your meditation class, there is your breathing activity, here is your mindfulness, here is your yoga class, here is your lunchtime learn activities. Those are all wellness activities because they allow you to implement practices of doing and maintaining your physical and mental health. However, that doesn't include considering more of a strategic and more of a holistic underlining reasons for maybe why people are not feeling well in the first place, why someone is stressed, why someone is not happy at work, why someone is demotivated, why someone is struggling to cope, and what are some of those underlining strategic structural changes that need to happen on the organizational level to support the employees. So if your people don't have psychological safety to enjoy their work, if they don't have the right environment to be themselves, if they feel overwhelmed by stresses and pressures and their workload, then clearly yoga class or 5-minute breathing exercise will not solve their problems. And yet I see this again and again and again, this tick box exercise of some one-off activities that are being put in that fails to address this strategic concern. What is it exactly that we need to be looking at on organizational level to address this? And that's where well-being strategy comes in. So well-being is so much more than just yoga and mindfulness. Well-being is including your whole self and bringing your best self to work and being your best. So that means looking at all of the interferences on organizational level that prevents you from being your best self, and looking at putting in the right resources and the right support for you to be your best where matters the most. And that's obviously, it's a huge field, and that's obviously my area of expertise, helping companies to create this organizational well-being and the right strategy and the right ways of being on daily basis, right ways of working, and systems of support that creates that right environment where every person can be their best selves at work. Hi Pia, nice to have you here. Right, so it is difficult, but I have always strived to do a job that I love, so it's not work. In jobs that I've done which feels like work, I try and have discussions with my manager and workplace to address this. I think culture in the organization and our ability for self-care are important to address. Absolutely. So here, Pia, I think what you are bringing here is a very, very important aspect, is the responsibility of the employer and responsibility of the person themselves. So where is the boundary in between, right? What is the responsibility of the company to look after their staff, after their employees, and how much supposed to be left to the individual? And where, when you are coming to your line manager and you're sharing with them some of your concerns or some of your maybe even mental health issues, what is the responsibility of you as a manager, as a leader, as an employer, and what needs to be left for them. And here I think it's very important that employers do not become rescuers, and they're not providing all of the resolutions and all of the solutions and all of the answers. So the difference is really in making sure that the doing bit, the action taking, still stays with individual. It's individual who needs to take an action to help themselves. But the employer then has to create the right environment to enable that person to take the action. So what does this mean? That we sometimes know what is best for us, but there are a lot of limitations for us to be able to do that in terms of our ways of working, in terms of our expectations, in terms of our resources, knowledge, self-awareness. So organizations' responsibility is to equip their staff with the right knowledge, so the right education about support available, to provide the right self-awareness and maybe journey of personal development for individuals so they can get to know themselves and their own strengths and their own limitations, to better understand what drives them. So then they know what they need. It's so important to understand our own needs and also to provide the options for support. So that doesn't mean that that support has to come from the organization, but to even educate each individual about the options that are available to them. Either that's coming from what they are able to do themselves, what they are able to get from the organization, and what are some of these other external support options, and maybe employee assistance programs, mental health discussions and support groups, or whatever that might be, or even external counseling if it's needed. But it's important that there are these options that people are aware of, and we educate people to take those right choices and create the right environment and safety of trust where it is okay for individual to open up about that and say, this is where I am, this is how I feel, this is what I need. And then from here say, well, it's wonderful, this is what we can do, this is how we can support you. So the action taking, it's very important that it remains with the individual, but the education and the awareness and creating the right environment for people to take that action is definitely the responsibility of the employer. And definitely, as Pia is highlighting here correctly, not all the managers are equipped to have these conversations, and definitely that's the part of what I do in my job, delivering some of these mental health awareness training for line managers, because it's difficult to establish that boundary. It's difficult to be there for someone and to really show them that you care, that you support, but you are not the one who's going to solve their problems. It's very, very important, and not to put yourself in a place where you as a line manager, as a leader, you are now a rescuer and you're expected to fulfill the role of their therapist and a counselor and a financial advisor and to fulfill all of their needs in the workplace, right? It's providing a safety, trusting environment, and a sounding board for that person to realize their own needs. So you're nearly holding a mirror to them and saying, so what I'm hearing is this, what I'm sensing is that. Okay, what can we do for you to enable you to voice your own concerns? What are the right actions? And communication here and communication skills are very, very important. Empathy, emotional intelligence, so important. Hi, Marina. Good to see you here. So, Marina is saying achieving the balance between the employer and the person is very important. The employer can support the individual with education, awareness, and support. Absolutely. And it's very important that when we have those conversations, we are having human conversations, heart to heart, person to person, to really be there for them, to really help them to open up and share their feelings and share their struggles. But at the same time, there is also that professional boundary that has to be maintained, where we say, I'm here to listen, to support and connect with you on that human level, but I'm not the one to actually solve these problems. And that is very important definition here, because sometimes what I see that in companies, and especially now, it's very trendy to encourage people to talk. It's okay not to be okay. Everyone, let's share their stories of mental health and share their personal struggles. We encourage people to talk. We invite, inspirational speakers who also share their own personal stories to demonstrate that it's okay. And look, these people have gone through similar journeys and they are sharing and talking about it. And it can be very inspiring and creates a sense of belonging and sense of knowing that you are not alone on the journey. So it is definitely very important to talk. However, before we encourage people to talk, before we say that it's okay to open up, are we allowing people to, are we creating the right environment in our businesses to listen first? It's all very well to say speak, but actually, are you equipping those leaders, those managers, anyone in your organization to listen to your peers when they maybe open up? Right? It's all very well to say, let's talk about this. But when somebody opens up, do we really know how to hold a safe space to them? Do we really know how to listen? Do we know do's and don'ts? And the most important thing here is not to jump in with advice, with solutions, with answers, what you should do and what you shouldn't do and what you should try, but really honing on those human connections and being there for someone and holding the space for them. Holding the safe space for them is the most important thing that we should be teaching everyone before we encourage anyone to open up about how they are feeling, right? It's very, very important. And it's very important if we want to create that environment of safety and trust, and also combat stigma. Because if someone opens up about how they feel, and we are saying, oh, you should do this and you should do that, and I've tried that, and there is already a level of judgment implied in that, because now there is a superiority, right? I know what I should do and I will tell you. Well, that should never happen, because you know what? Everyone's mental health journey is very, very different. And even if I suffer with depression and you suffer with depression, we will all go through very different experiences when we all have very different reasons. So therefore, we should never imply that we know how you feel. We should never say, oh, yes, I understand. I know exactly how you feel. We should never be telling people what they should do and what they shouldn't do. What we're really supposed to be doing is creating that holding safe space, creating that psychological sense of safety for a person to connect with you on a human level, to open up and explore their own experiences. So if someone is sharing how they're feeling, leave your own journey, your own advice, and your own tips to to professionals, and for them to discover their own journey. Your role is to create the right environment and connect on a human level. Right, so we're having here recommendations for ACAS mental health training for managers and mental health first aid training. So there are some cautions here that I have to I kind of have to mention in line with that. So definitely both trainings are great. And there is training for managers and mental health first aid specifically. Now, when we're looking at mental health first aid and what exactly that is created for, it's created there to raise an awareness about mental health and different conditions, and it creates an awareness to facilitate a conversation. So if you have the right knowledge about maybe certain conditions and certain mental health labels as such, it allows us to talk about them freely without this stigma attached to it, right? So that's really the goal of that. However, what is very important to be aware of, that mental health first aid qualification and the organization itself do not screen people who are attending mental health first aid training. So as employers who are choosing to send our people onto those trainings, then it's up to us to make sure that these individuals are the right people to attend that training. And what I see very often, that who is going on to those trainings? Maybe someone who's suffering with mental health issues themselves, right? And therefore you feel like, okay, well, these people have gone through some of those experiences. They understand what it feels. Therefore, they are the right people to have those conversations. Well, not necessarily, because guess what? Now, someone who is maybe vulnerable themselves are opening up to be having those conversations with others, and that might be triggering their own vulnerabilities and their own aspects of coping. So it's very important that to realize that mental health first aid is only there for awareness, but it's not necessarily giving you practical tools to help yourself and to necessarily help others. It's really a point of conversation and point of directing people to the right alternative support options. So it's very important that we create processes of safeguarding not necessarily anyone who would be going to see the mental health first aider, but the mental health first aider themselves, making sure that they are safe, that they are in the right place. And I had some personal experiences where I had to pick up some of the pieces of mental health first aid going wrong, and it's easier to prevent this than to solve where it's gone too far. So definitely, I would encourage for organizations to definitely train their line managers to have those right conversations. But it's very important that we put safeguarding policies and practices in place to ensure everyone's well-being. It's very, very important to protect everyone in the process. So thank you very much for highlighting that point. It's very, very important. Now, so we were talking here about creating that right environment and safety for people to open up, and the psychological safety. So I would also look at what are the fears and what are some of those boundaries that may be preventing people from opening up. And I think every organization will have some of their own inherent fears that are maybe associated with job roles, with the way how promotions are being managed. So for example, some people will choose not to open up to the line managers because they will fear being overlooked for promotion, right? Because they will say, well, if you are struggling right now, if you're struggling to deal with this change, how will you struggle to cope with a new job or new role and so on? But you know what? Maybe that change is exactly what that individual needs to be able to cope with their situation, to give them that motivation and energy to then focus their attention onto the bigger picture. So it gives them sense of purpose and motivation, and therefore then maybe energy to address their own self-care. So definitely it's very important to look at what are some of the fears, some of these kind of inherited fears within the organization that might prevent people from opening up, and looking at how can we address those. So if this is the specific fear that what would prevent people from speaking about, then what is it exactly that we can put in as an alternative or a system of support that overcomes that barrier. And when we're looking at creating the right environment, creating the right motivation for our employees, I would like to consider 3 important aspects of our inherent human needs from psychological evolutionary perspective. Martina is saying it's very important to follow up on actions. Agreed. Absolutely. It's important to give the awareness, to give the tools, but it's also following up and making sure that the person feels supported, that they have the right tools to take the action. And sometimes it's even taking that first step, asking, what can I do to support you? What can prevent you from taking the action and addressing that in advance? So to put this in a little bit of the context here, Marina, in reflection to what you're saying, imagine if I am a coach and I am setting a goal with my client. So in the same setting, let's say the line manager could be setting a goal for their employee to achieve specific target or a goal for themselves, right? So let's say my client says, okay, I want to set the goal for myself to be running 5 times a week. So you set the goal, you work out logistics, and you say, right, my goal is to go running 5 times a week. And then next week you are reviewing your goals, and the person will say, oh, how successfully have you achieved your own goals? And the person will say, well, actually, I've only gone running once. Well, why? Well, one day it was raining, so I don't feel like running in the rain. The other day I was too tired after work. The other day I had some family challenges and I had to be there for kids, so I couldn't do that. So we're coming up now with all of the things that actually prevented that person from sticking up to their goals. But imagine now that as part of the initial goal setting conversation, if we are asking the person, okay, so your goal is to be, to go running 5 times a week. For what purpose you want to have that goal? So of course it's to exercise, to be healthy, to maybe lose weight, to maybe achieve certain level of fitness, right? So you're looking at underlying level. And now from this perspective, when we ask, okay, so what can prevent you from achieving this goal? What can prevent you from, let's say, going out for running? If we have in advance, like, okay, I might be tired, there might be a poor weather, there might be a family situation. Now we can create an alternative to running that you can replace that with. So, okay, my goal is to run 5 days a week, but if it's raining, I will do weightlifting instead. If I have a family situation, I will make sure that I will then take time off work to create space for my exercise. If this happens, then I will do X, Y, Z. So if we are addressing some of the reasons what can prevent us from taking that action in advance by creating those if-then scenarios, then we are much more likely to succeed in achieving our objectives. So definitely the follow-up is important, but actually is the follow-up, the pre-frame, where we are looking at what can prevent you from taking this action and creating those strategic actions in advance that will help us to implement this successfully in practice. So here it brings also a very important point. What prevents us from taking the right action, right? So often we know what's good for us. We know that we should be looking after our own health, our well-being, but there are all these things that prevent us from implementing it in practice. Why is it so difficult? Sometimes we know what's good for us and we still struggle to implement it in practice. So often we feel about we set, let's say, our New Year's resolutions and our goals and intentions, but few weeks down the line, we back to our old habits and old unhealthy routines, right? Why? Well, it's because we live our lives as these rational, intelligent human beings, but in reality, most of the time, we are run by these subconscious, automatic, evolutionary neural principles, right? So we end up fighting ourselves. It's nearly like there are different parts of the brain. There is the human part of the brain that says, eat kale salad. And then the other part of you that's survived throughout evolution by looking for high sugar, high calorie, high carbs says, no, have that second slice of the chocolate cake. And guess which one is going to win? Of course, the one that has been there for much longer and it's much more powerful and works and operates at subconscious level. So we are constantly end up fighting ourselves because we sometimes don't understand some of those principles of these subconscious human drivers, some of these evolutionary drivers. If we know how those principles operate, then guess what? We can employ them to do the work for us, and we can subconsciously drive our right actions and right behaviors to create healthy routines and healthy habits and achieve our goals. So what are some of those evolutionary needs? And there are really three main drivers. So here is what I call the C of human needs. So SEA. So S stands for safety and survival. That's always our main priority. And how exactly that manifests in our modern environment is that we are looking for familiarity, we're looking for the routine, we are looking for awareness and clear expectations of what's going to happen tomorrow. We are looking for the level of sameness and stability, right? So on one hand, you want to know what's going to happen. You want to be safe. There's sense of safety and familiarity within you, the psychological sense of safety that gives you that stability and routine. So there is level of sameness. We know what's expected of us. We know what's going to happen. But on the other hand, there is this exploration and this evolutionary drive to learn something new and explore. And we want excitement and challenges and growth. So if we are not growing, we feel stuck, right? We feel stagnated, and that's not a nice place to be. So here is always a balance between the two. On one hand, you want some sort of stability and routine, but if all you have is stability and routine, you feel stuck. You feel like you're not growing, you're not evolving. You want some challenge and motivation. But if all you have is the challenge and motivation and push to grow, and then all you have is chaos, right? So these two needs always have to be balanced. We need to have the stable ground and a certain level of structure and routine that gives us the psychological safety, but then we need to learn something new and develop. So it's very important that in organizations, we're actually creating this. So what creates for your employees the level of safety, and what creates the level of progression and the challenge and growth? It's very important to balance the two. And the A is for affiliation. So we have evolved as social beings. We would have not been able to survive for millions of years on our own. We are social animals. We have to be part of the group. We have to belong. So it's very important that we create that sense of belonging and connection on a human level. We feel part of something bigger. We feel part of the group, and the exclusion is really threatening to our survival. So the safety, exploration, and affiliation are very, very important. So it's by making sure that we satisfy those three needs within our working environment that will create the right field for people to be motivated, to be happy, to be engaged with their work, and have certain level of stability and growth and sense of belonging that ensures their well-being and mental health. And this is a big, big part of organizational well-being, how exactly you implement those three needs strategically. So how exactly does that look like? That's a huge, huge question here. And definitely we're looking at working with our bodies, not against it. So how can we work with our circadian rhythm? How can we work with ultradian rhythms of our brain? When are we the most productive? When we are the most creative? When do we need to rest? When is the good time to focus? When is the good time to solve the problems, and so on? So it's very important that we are structuring our ways of working on organizational level to provide for the flexibility for these different needs. So thank you everyone for watching. If you have any other questions, if you are here, please say hello. And I hope this is helpful. I think it's so important that as we're going through this change and through this pandemic completely distorting our ways of living, of leading our lives and businesses, that we take time to step back and look at the bigger picture. And we look at what it means to be human, what it means to be healthy, what it means to be well. And we integrate some of those principles and some of those underlining human drivers into organizations. And the way organizations adapt to the challenges, the way organizations respond to the current crisis, I think will really define the success of our businesses for the long term. The way we look after our employees, the way we are able to adapt and change to the to the changes, it will really define success of our future of our business. So thank you, Andrew, thank you, Marina, thank you, Pia, thank you everyone else who's tuning in and watching this. Thank you, Med, thank you, Kapish, thank you, Soham, thank you for all of your questions and engagement. And if you have any other questions, if you are looking for any other support, please do let me know. I am also I also have an offer of some of my services that I'm offering to organizations at the moment. And one of the most needed interventions that I found was the most valuable throughout this year was stress resilience workshops. So how exactly we can enable each person to increase their capacity, their threshold for coping with stress and pressure, and how we can create organizational resilience, where we create the right environment for each individual to be their best. So for anyone, for any organization who is ordering some of my workshops at this time, I'm also for the rest of the month of May, I am offering a complimentary assessment of your organizational well-being needs and providing further recommendations for what is it that you can do in your organization to create that healthy culture that supports health and well-being of all employees and allows them to create the right allows us to achieve those right organizational objectives in a way that doesn't sacrifice individual well-being. So if you are interested to learn more, please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to answer all of your other questions and provide other support opportunities. So thank you everyone for watching, and I am looking forward to hearing about what was your biggest takeaway from some of my insights here, and what can you do differently. So what is the support that you are receiving from your organization? What is the support that you as employer providing for your staff? What are some of your best practices, and is there anywhere else that you do need support? Please do let me know. I'll be very interested to hear from you, your story and your situation, and I'm more than happy to provide additional help and support. So thank you everyone, and have a wonderful week. Bye then.